Oh, hello. I'm not sure if it's necessary to do this, but it seems that I can't find the stream that I call part 2 on my main channel. I can't find it in the video section, so I don't know if they've deleted it or not, or if they haven't, they're going to delete it later. So this is in fact a restream of that. So here it is again, and I hope you find it worthwhile. Hello. I thought I'd give you my further thoughts on the Millennial Woes situation, as I have gathered information about what it was that he was supposed to have done that got him kicked out of the Patriotic Alternative. It seems that he has a checkered sexual history. We already knew that, didn't we? He admitted some years ago that he was bisexual. I think he said 75% straight, 25% gay. He was with some woman he met who subsequently decided to do the dirty on him and basically betrayed his confidence. Mind you, could that be conclusive evidence of bad judgment, that you keep meeting women who betray you? Apparently some photographs of some sex organs were sent. But I believe this is typical now of how Western men court Western women. They send women that they are interested in having sex with, photographs of their genitalia. They send obscene text messages. This is known as sexting, and this they have done since their time at a secondary school. So this is nothing new. How old is Millennial Woes now? I think he's in his 30s, isn't he? I myself have noticed that, being the victim of this kind of behaviour, all you did was to be polite, friendly, and the next thing you know, you are inundated with obscene suggestions and unsolicited photographs of sex organs. So this is, I'm afraid, the culture that we live in now, and it's not surprising that it is something that can be problematic when you're trying to organise yourselves politically. I suppose it is unfortunate for him that that all this sort of thing broke out when he was at the conference. But I suppose if he had been luckier, then when all that had happened at a quieter time, then it would have been all right. So really, it's just a matter of who betrayed your confidence, where it was done and how it was done, And unfortunately, it is the case that neither Western man nor Western woman can be particularly trusted with each other's confidences. And of course, if you so casually release photographs of your erect organ to women you barely know, they might like to use it against you. We already know that stories are paid for by tabloid newspapers like The Sun. We also know that Max Clifford, who is now in jail, was known to be in the market for kiss and tell stories. So I guess Millennial Woes was just another victim of a kiss and tell story, but these days the kissing is a little bit more obscene in unmentionable parts. So what are we to learn from this, and how quickly his former comrades dissociated themselves from him? Presumably it's to protect the reputation of Patriotic Alternative, who is thinking of running elections in the next few years. Who knows, we might even find ourselves in a real war situation when, as you would expect, elections will be cancelled. So this is really a storm in a teacup. I'm sure half the men who've accused him of gross sexual misbehaviour will be privately thinking that there but for the grace of God go I. I'm sure it is a convention to send interested women that they're interested in photographs of their erect organs. It is really just something they do. It's part of their degenerate culture. It's so common now that some Democratic senator in America was done for exactly that. His name was Weiner, wasn't it? Millennial Woes and I have had a rather checkered relationship. I suppose I liked him because he dared to discuss philosophical issues that the cruder, ruder kind of nationalist just wouldn't ever talk about. He wasn't just interested in politics, he might talk about movies he likes, and I guess what he was able to do was speak about these things in an engaging way. And for that reason, he gave the impression that nationalism was somehow more understandable, more likeable, more ordinary, more... And of course these are powerful messages. Unfortunately, he's part of the culture of his time, and he got mixed up in politics and mixed up with unreliable women, as well as sexual practices that are less than dignified when it all gets talked about. We live in a world where really very little is forgotten. Files you think you've deleted have not really been deleted. People you've blocked do not always feel that they owe you any duty of care, They can happily betray you because they have access to photographs, messages that you wrote to them in an unguarded moment, that kind of thing. But what does this show? It merely shows that there is no code of honour amongst nationalists. They have no ability to organise themselves or even think of protecting themselves by evolving a code of honour. Of course, gentlemen in the olden days would instinctively understand what it is that they must do. The elite, the aristocracy, would understand that if they fought amongst each other, then soon the mob will be coming to get them. And that is why you get what are called samurai codes of honour, aristocratic ideas of honour in which the men who are part of this group will observe, not really just out of honour, but out of a sense of self-preservation, which unfortunately these plebs in nationalism do not have. And hence Millennial Woes is now out of the game. They are suggesting that a few dick pics here and there, a few indiscreet messages is going to condemn this fledgling political party called the Patriotic Alternative. Actually wouldn't really make any difference because they're not going to win anyway. So it is a little like bald men fighting over a comb. Just before he was stabbed in the front and the back by his former comrades, he did ask a few interesting questions in his clips from his AMA, longer AMA streams, and it is a shame that he's been kind of hounded out. I don't think he should give up. I think he should just continue, except that he shouldn't associate himself with these micro parties, shall we say. These micro parties that are really just social clubs for people who don't like Jews, don't like Muslims, and want to kick various people out. I think he would be even more interesting as a YouTuber now if he can gather his thoughts enough to give an account of himself after he has had a bit of a time to think things through on his own. And so I think he can retrieve the situation and still do his thing. I'm sure there'll be lots of people still prepared to talk to him if he's still prepared to ask and even try to answer the questions that he asks himself. Whether he will talk to me or not is, well, it doesn't matter. I'm doing this not because I expect any kind of reward. I simply say that he would be more useful as a YouTuber doing his business, asking real questions, than worrying about what these men of straw that are his former comrades think about this and that. If he passed a few STDs on to promiscuous women, then, well, that's too bad for them. And if, as was claimed, one of the girls was a virgin, well, virgins should be careful of their honour, shouldn't they? I think a lot of morals can be extracted from the situation. There were a few people suggesting that he had no right to fly women from America to the UK to have sex with him. Immediately one is reminded of Prince Andrew and Epstein, of course. I don't think they did anything illegal after all. Technically, there is no law against having sex with anyone who is not below the age of consent. Of course, people react with glee when they find that some public personality has put himself in a situation that turned out to be embarrassing. But I guess you can always weather it and, well, not submit to the ridiculous storms of hypocritical outrage by other men who, I'm sure, have done more or less the same thing, except that they were a little more careful to manage the publicity, the fallout from such events. Who knows? I'm not such a prude as to not be aware of what people get up to these days. And it is precisely this kind of culture that will make it impossible for nationalists to organise. These plebeian men are basically thirsty for sex and attention from women, and they are the ones most liable to fall into honey traps, precisely because they are so thirsty and so desperate and lead such lives of quiet desperation. But I think if he does continue, if he will talk about it, if he doesn't allow himself to be hounded out of the alt-right, I really wouldn't worry about them saying you can't attend our conferences anymore. I mean, who wants to go to their conferences anyway? The point is that Millennial Woes made his name as a YouTuber. So he could easily continue if only he had the courage to say these things. I imagine that he'll be celibate for quite a bit, if not out of shock at the trouble sexual indiscretions can result in. But I don't think it will be the end of him. I hope it won't be the end of him. I'm sure he will ask lots of interesting questions about religion And it is in particular religion that I wish to speak about, that nobody cares to discuss with me. But it is telling, isn't it, how his former comrades gloated with such glee and alacrity. There is certainly no honour amongst this particular band of thieves. I think he is really better off without them, and better off being independent, asking questions that he doesn't feel he needs to get the stamp of approval from Mark Collett, who is actually an immensely dishonest person. I've tried to ask him a few times what he thought religion was for, and he couldn't answer. He didn't want to answer. It is just easier to say, oh, well, nobody believes in God now, nobody cares about religion. But of course it is my position that it is the failure of your religion that has brought you to this pretty pass. And religion, of course, gives you the moral system that allows you to deal with your internal and external enemies. I do think these things need to be discussed urgently. These are important matters of state, actually. And of course, these fledgling political parties are only interested in choosing somebody to blame. So Mark Collett wants to blame Jews. There's another political party called For Britain who prefers to blame Muslims. Is this what nationalism is all about? When the roof is leaking, instead of calling in the roofers as a householder, all you do is blame the other members of the household about who could possibly be to blame for making the roof leak. Wear and tear, perhaps. Okay, I think that is the end of it. So, while this was streaming, I have received new information, or I should call it possibly new disinformation, because they are, again, unsubstantiated rumours. Hello, Stephen James. No, I'm not into domination. Stephen James. I know people think I'm bossy, but I'm not really. Oh dear. God, raw day. Okay, I need to close all these windows because they're all going mad. And then I guess I'll have to close down this stream. And do other things. But this is all very undignified, I'm afraid, isn't it?
Protection program, it did not work.
Oh no.
Protection program, it did not work as planned on many levels. A lot of big businesses tried to usurp the money.
I closed the wrong thing. Oops. Okay, let me get back into what it was. Okay, it's still there. Yeah, it does sound like a stitch up. Anyway, we don't know. And, okay, let me just check before I go. I'm going to check out when the Patriotic Alternative conference was, because I remember Mark talking about it. Patriotic conference. I see it's date. It comes out as 16th March. So she's only decided to complain about it a month later. Did she come back from the bridge looking dishevelled, or did she look all right? Were there any witnesses? It'll be too long now to remember, right? Because of the lockdown and all these hotels being shut down, the staff being dismissed. So anybody working might, I don't know, left the country or whatever. So, I'm just saying, even if he had raped her, it can't be proven, can it? Unless you told somebody, at the time. But if you chose not to, it's all crazy. It's like, sometimes you just have to think, well, I didn't complain at the time. I can't bring it up, 3,000 years later, right? If you want to complain, you'll have to complain at the time, just after it was done, not a month later, a month and a bit later. I think there should be a limitation period on these things. But anyway, we'll soon see, we're just speculating on speculation upon speculation. Stephen James, you can be quite funny, can't you? Anyway, I guess I have nothing more other than more speculation, and I don't really want to do that to anyone, not even my worst enemy. So I'm going to leave it at that. But I think this latest development could potentially be helpful in demonstrating the state of gender relations in the West. You know, if all men are going to do to each other, men and women in the West are going to do to each other is rape each other and complain about being raped by each other, then I guess you're not going to stay together for the sake of the kids, right? And then you'll just produce even more degenerate people who already rape and complain about rape about each other. You're not going to have much of a society. So maybe we should talk about how women and men should behave and what the terms of engagement are and the price of sex and how this market should be regulated. Really, it is the source of all your problems. So I will go now. And thank you all for coming by.